My name is Regina Banks. I'm the director of the Lutheran Office of Public Policy, California, administrator of the ELCA.
And hello, I'm Sriram Madhusoodanan. I'm director of climate advocacy and policy for US Climate Action Network.
We're here at COP30 in Belém, Brazil, and that was not an uncontroversial choice. COP has become one of the largest conventions in the world every year, and it brings people from all walks of life and the whole of society to talk about the climate crisis. And there are really only so many places in the world that can host a COP comfortably. And it was not thought that Belém was going to be one of those places. It's difficult to get to. It does not necessarily have a great international airport. There are not nearly enough hotel rooms in the area for everyone. But the trade-off for being in Belém was that it would give indigenous voices that are in the Amazonian region an opportunity to participate with COP in a way that has not been available before. So that was a reinvestment in civil society.
Yeah.
As a result of the protests that went on yesterday, we're hearing more and more reports that maybe that access to COP for our indigenous siblings is not happening the way that we anticipated that it would happen. Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, I think these are all really good points, and I'd say maybe start off with a couple of things. First, Belém certainly isn't without its logistical challenges, but it was a very conscious decision by the Brazilian presidency to bring it here. And I know a number of us in civil society, US Climate Action Network, we are the largest civil society network of US climate justice and environmental organizations. We're part of CAN International, Climate Action Network International, which has more than 1,000 organizations around the world that are concerned about this. I think I'd say just a couple of things to the situation, what's happening here in Belém, right?
Right.
One is this is one of the most highly attended COPs.
Okay.
So despite all of the challenges, I think it speaks to the fact that globally, climate is on everyone's minds. Like, we are seeing more and more drastic climate impacts happening from places in the US that are being hit by devastating hurricanes and wildfires, to places around the world that are experiencing loss and damage that they did very little to create. I think the second thing that there is to say is absolutely the big point of hosting COP in Belém and the Brazilian presidency taking this on was to make sure that, and we heard a lot about civil society's access. This is the first time that there is a people's summit that is happening outside the COP in recent memory, frankly. And so amidst all of that, it is certainly disappointing to hear from some of our indigenous siblings that they're having trouble accessing the space. And I think they are also here to send a very powerful message. The Brazilian government recently opened up some oil and gas leases directly in their territories, directly affecting their lives. And so, they are, as they have every right to do, raising concerns with that. So I think, this is not without its challenges, but there's also a bigger picture trend that's happening here, which is the fact of the matter is there's been a shrinking ability for civil society to get into this space while we're seeing the halls crawling with fossil fuel lobbyists.
Absolutely. And both as Americans, we've been noticing that because the U.S. State Department isn't here, a lot of the space that would be the gathering place for mayors and governors and other members of government from the United States who would be hosted at the U.S. pavilion are now going to business interest pavilions, which isn't wrong in and of itself. You need a meeting place. You need some place to be able to have those conversations. But it is remarkable that they didn't come to civil society. We would have gotten them a place. We are their constituencies as well, and we're not getting that kind of access the way the business community is.
Yeah, there's civil society here who are coming from states that are home to some of these climate champions or supposed climate champions, but we have, I would say, honest conversations we want to have with some of our elected officials in terms of their plans to help the world meet its climate goals. Just because the US is pulling out of the Paris Agreement doesn't mean that that's game over for subnational leaders. And this is a moment for those elected leaders to show leadership and, frankly, show which side of history they're on.
What are you looking forward to for the rest of the COP? What are your takeaways?
I think there's a couple of things. I think just to go back to this UN reform, there's a real need for the COP that we need. We need to be honest that we've been, this is the 10-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement. 30 years since the COP process has been happening, we need to be asking the tough questions about how can we reform this process so the voice of civil society, those most affected by the climate crisis, is at the center. Because if we're not trying to achieve a better outcome for real people's lives, what are we trying to achieve through this process? As part of that, I'd love to see the fossil fuel lobbyists kicked out of the COP. They've had 30 years of being in here, 10 years of being in the Paris Agreement. We haven't met the goals that we need to. And I'm part of a broad movement within civil society that believes that they're a massive part of the problem rather than really providing the solutions. Or if those solutions are there, they're really about extending the lifetime of fossil fuel extraction. And the last thing I would say is it's really long overdue for there to be a clear, just transition outcome out of this COP. That is a united call that's been echoed by more than 1,000 trade unions, civil society organizations, indigenous people, Afro-descendant communities around the world. It's time to adopt the BAM, what we're calling the Belém Action Mechanism, and for us to also not forget the commitments that we've made. So that's why I'm wearing also the badge to fill the fund for loss and damage, which was a critical victory won by so many groups across civil society, including many faith organizations a few years ago in Sharm el-Sheikh. So building on the victories that we've had and making sure that this process is able to win even more victories in a shorter period of time because we don't have a lot of time left to waste.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.